Welcome to the Grow Your Independent Consulting Business podcast. I'm Melisa Liberman, a fellow IC and business coach. On this podcast, I teach you to become a consistently booked independent consultant without becoming a pushy salesperson or working 24/7. If I can do it, you can too. Listen on to find out how. Welcome to this week's episode of the Grow Your Independent Consulting Business podcast. This is Melisa Liberman, and today I am so excited to introduce to you a client of mine and a fellow independent consultant, Matty Bakkeren, who runs the company Moment Thesis. And I asked him to come on the podcast today because he has implemented a really interesting technique or strategy in his consulting business that is enabling him to grow his business, get out of his own way. And he's done that by applying a concept that worked really well for him in corporate and has taken that and applied it and adjusted it so that it applies to his independent consulting business. So I'm not going to tell you what it is right now because I want to really leave that for the episode, but to give you a little teaser, that's what we talk about on today's episode is using the strategy that Matty will share with you in order to better set yourself up to succeed as an independent consultant, to hit your consulting business goals, to get out of your own way, and a way to really solve one of the challenges that we often face, which is this can be a lonely process or it's easy to get in our own heads. So without further ado, I'm really excited to introduce you to Matty and for you to hear what he has to share and to dive into this conversation. So let's dive in. All right. Matty, I'm so thrilled to have you on the podcast today. What an honor to have you here. I knew you had to come on the podcast and you graciously accepted because you've created such an interesting concept that I think comes from your corporate days that I would love for you to share with the other independent consultants. So it's a little bit mysterious, but we'll say what it is here in a minute. A little teaser, I guess. And then we may get into other topics as well. You have such a wealth of knowledge to share with your fellow consultants. So with that, before we dive in though, I would love it if you could introduce yourself and tell the audience about who you are and a little bit about your company.
Okay, we'll dive straight in. Before we do, Melisa, I am so stoked to be here. I'm an avid listener of your podcast. I used to be on the receiving end of this. So being here, it's amazing. So thank you for that opportunity and just, thank you for the work you do because I'm sure there's a lot of consultants like me that really enjoy listening to your podcast and take learning from it. So that's the disclaimer. Let's get that out the way, but just wanted to make sure that that's in there. Okay, so I'll talk a little bit about me and what I do. So I'm a guy that's technical at heart. I have a commercial brain. I am passionate about, where to apply technology and how to monetize it. And I love making that puzzle. It energizes me. And, when I get energized, I energize the people around me. So, basically, I'm a nerd with a sales brain in the body of an energy bunny. Like I just, once I see things and I see how they fit together, I get excited. And then, I'll create that energy with people around me. So that's basically what I do. I co-own the challenge with the client to figure out how to get their innovation in market and get people on the bandwagon with me. I've been in the IT industry for 30 years. I'm based in Rotterdam in the Netherlands. I worked 23 years for Intel Corporation. And I was doing exactly that, right? First as a technology expert, and I've worked in many verticals and different industry, oil and gas, finance, retail, you name it. Worked with the press, had many different roles. 23 years in a company, you kind of go around, right?
Yeah.
And at the end of it, I managed partner alliances across EMEA for some of the biggest partnerships. And I loved working with teams across these diverse geographies. I'm a non-native English speaker, okay? So let's get that out of the way as well. Sometimes I struggle with the English a little bit, so sorry about that.
I'm a native English speaker and I struggle with the language sometimes too. So we're okay.
So we're okay. So in 22, I left Intel and I started my own consultancy firm. It's called Moment Thesis. And I basically help technology companies position new, emerging or undervalued technologies or initiatives in market. So as a growth consultant, I'm kind of a chameleon that looks across strategy, product innovation, and scaling with ecosystem and partners. to see where the gaps are and how I can help align things to get to success. It's really about people, process, and technology. And I love doing that. So I basically took what I did in corporate and now I'm doing it under the moment thesis flag. And if you're wondering what is moment thesis, well, it's a combination of two words, momentum and synthesis. So I tried to build momentum by combining existing things, the synthesis, which makes moment thesis. So that's me. That's what I do. Bit of a long winded intro, but now we're friends.
Oh, so good. So happy to have you here. I think it's so fun to be a listener and then be a guest on the podcast. So we're happy you're here. So, what I was teasing earlier, and one of the reasons I wanted to bring you on to the podcast is to talk about a concept you've created in your business that I think you call
Mm,
it the inner circle, where
yeah.
you've leveraged different advisors that you've built relationships with over the years and then conduct an executive business review on a quarterly basis. So I thought it'd be fun to start there and then we'll see where the conversation goes. But tell us a little bit about this inner circle and the EBR and what is it exactly, Matty?
Okay, let me demystify this for you. Not rocket science, really. Okay, so the EBR is an executive business review. It's a meeting, it's about strategy, and the purpose really is to propel the company forward in a meaningful way. The review is a way, it's a meeting, right, to identify strengths and weaknesses and to understand what's working well and what areas need improvement and to celebrate successes.
Mm,
So it comes from my days in corporate. You kind of gave that away in the intro already, right?
yeah.
So you're dead on.
Yeah.
So we used to run QBRs with clients. Many of
Yeah.
you in corporate will know this concept, right? Quarterly business reviews. For those of you that don't, QBRs are quarterly meetings where you typically discuss, status quo, your pot to target, you review activities, the achievements of last quarter, you project plans and activities for next quarter, and then you sit down and you tweak and tune and you get buy-in from your client and sign off from your superiors, and then you agree on actions and budgets for the next quarter. So it's basically a sit down every quarter where you get in sync with your clients and you kind of mix up the tactics with the strategy and you make sure you're tracking towards the goal. I used to do that a lot with my clients. I mean, we had multi-million dollar targets and, $1 million budgets to go with it. So there was a lot at stake there. And QBRs typically are a group of people, right? It's not a one-on-one.
Hmm.
Different people that are doing different top level initiatives or that are driving certain task force. So you need to make sure that everybody's in sync on, where the boat is going. And I kind of took that from corporate and adjusted it to my own purposes. I took a page out of your book because you always come up with these great concepts and these mechanisms how to do something, and they're so great. So I'm like, hey, that's cool. I can do that. So I renamed it to an EBR. And instead of a client meeting, I put myself and my business in front of a group of executives. They're my sounding board. And the reason really is to get an objective set of inputs, feedback, and it's a similar format, right? What's the status? What's the action plan that we are planning on? What are the projections? Where are we going? So the QBR is now on me. It's my EBR.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned the inner circle, and this is important. So the people I present to are what I call my inner circle. And this comes from the people that are close to me. And we'll get to this hopefully a little bit later. But to be clear, these are people I implicitly trust. I highly respect these people. I've learned from and I continue to learn from these people, and they are senior to me, not always in age, but definitely in function, experience, title. They are smarter than me, they are more experienced, more skilled, and they are experts in their field. These are people I look up to. And that's important to me because those are the people I want advice from, right? These are the
Mm,
people that I, in a certain way, admire for a certain skill or a certain ability. So, if you'll allow me, I'll give some of these people some credit here, right?
yeah. Yeah.
So, I'll just
Absolutely.
refer to them by first name.
Yeah.
John is a great guy. He's actually an ex colleague of mine. I call him the gentleman value creator. This guy knows how to rally a crowd, how to build value, how to articulate value. Super smart, yet he's the humblest guy in the room. You'd never know. Then there's Phil. Phil was actually in the consultancy business, super smart. He and I did business together. He understands client needs. He understands how to cater to those needs, the service aspect of it. Again, somebody I highly admire. Mike is a guy I met in a plane over the Atlantic on one of my business
Mm,
trips. Turns out he's the CEO of a training company, sales training in Asia. Knows a ton of stuff about, sales tactics, strategies, cultures, just a wealth of knowledge. Has the heart to teach people as well. And then there's a recent addition, right? Another expert in the field of independent consultants. So, by the way, I try to rotate the team on a yearly basis because these
Yeah.
are senior people. You don't always know if these people have time. So,
Yeah.
Melissa, you graciously took on the assignment to jump in on this as well and get some firsthand experience what that feels like. So, fantastic, right? I listened to your podcast. I read your book. I'm nowhere near the level you are at. So, there's a lot of learnings I can get from you as well. So that's the type of people you want to have on your, well, you call it steering committee. I call it
Hmm.
my inner circle. These are people that need to be in your orbit, but not on your planet. So not too close. There needs to be a healthy distance, but they need to be able to understand your business, your challenges, and they need to be able to give you advice.
Mm.
And sometimes that's a little close to heart. That's okay.
Yeah.
That's what this is meant to be. But they also need to be able to pat you on the shoulder and say, "Good job." And yeah, you need to be able to respect these people because, yeah, there's a give and take that comes in here, right? These
Mhm.
are senior people.
Yeah.
So you need to make sure you lock in time with them. So my ask of them is really small. I ask 4 hours in a year, right? Give me 1 hour every quarter.
Hmm.
That's my ask. But I will make sure that the materials are with you ahead of time. You can internalize these materials, you can look them over. And then when we get the meeting, you can ask for some pointed questions.
Yeah.
So for those of you that are familiar with the TV series Dragon's Den, right, it's a little bit like that. You come out, you do your pitch, and then these very pointed questions that are like a pinprick to the heart come out, and it's like, oh, but have you thought of this?
Mm.
Why are you doing it like that? This doesn't make sense because X, Y, Z. And that's the power of an EBR because now you have to think, you have to go back and you go, why did I do that? Is this in line with the goal? Do I have the resources to do this? Is this the right time? And it's so valuable because as an independent consultant business owner, it's kind of a mouthful, by the way,
It
but
is.
that's a thing, right? Because you're always kind of arguing with yourself. You've got these five hats on, right? The
Yeah.
COO, CFO, and the CEO, and there's all these voices in your head, and you're trying to make sense of it. So now there's four people in the room and they're thinking about the same thing as you and they're offering you perspectives and
Hmm.
different views. I find it so valuable. So yeah, what's an EBR? How does
Yeah.
it work? And I hope that gives you a bit of a feel for what that is.
Yeah, I think it's a concept that most of us, I don't think, really consider because as a business of one, and I know you're growing your business into more of a firm, a boutique consultancy, but as a business of one, we sometimes overlook those concepts that we leveraged in corporate that were really valuable and they
Hmm.
can still apply to your business in a different, in a slightly reimagined way. And I think, to me, that's what's so creative about what you've been doing and how you've been running the business with this inner circle and the support that you've had as you've launched the business. Yeah.
I think that's dead on. I mean, so the inner circle is one. I think another concept that we can probably all relate to is virtual extended teams, right?
Yeah.
You worked at a corporate and you had colleagues. You just mentioned, you're working with different teams in different geographies. You had a virtual extended team. I
Yeah.
think as independent consultant business owners, that is a concept that maybe we can adopt as well. I've been toying with the idea of, hey, what if I could have an associate here, an associate there, and they're not tied to my company, but you kind of branch out into different areas of the business that could work, a virtual extended team. I mean, this is what we do. We take our corporate experience and we bring it to the world.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of us are equipped to do that. We just need to get creative in how do you apply those lessons from back in the day to the real world where you are now. And some of them may work, some of them may not, but
Yeah.
that's what we do. We assert and adjust.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell us a little bit about how so far, I think, how long have you been doing this, Maddie? For 6 months, a year?
You had to ask. Okay, so this is I basically left corporate in December 22, started my business in June, July 23. So I am now a year and a half, almost 2 years, going on 2 years now. So I'm a newbie, I'm a rookie.
Yeah. And have you had the inner circle the entire time, or is it something that's newer?
No. So I actually started doing that from the start. And I really wanted to do that because I felt for me that's something I need in my business.
Mm,
It's also a character thing. So I've learned on early in my career that I like to have options and test and see what works best. And I learned a long time ago that when I have a team around me to feed me with ideas, that kind of works best for me. I
mm,
once read a book where somebody called that a challenge network. Some people,
mm.
they thrive on a challenge network when
Yeah.
they get input from multiple people, and they can kind of, it's like a Rubik's cube. You put all those ideas in your head and you start twisting things around and flipping it until you get to a point where you're like, okay, I think it looks like this. I'm one of those guys.
Yeah.
So yeah, it just works for me. The thing that always I find so ironic is that we do this as consultants to our clients, but when it's your business, you need somebody to do it for you,
Mhm.
because you are in your business, right? You're in the forest. You see the trees, but you don't see the forest. You need somebody to give you that high level overview. The other thing, this is a bit more personal, but I know I'm a bit of a perfectionist.
Mm.
You smile. And sometimes that gets in my way and it limits me. So I know that I can get caught up in details before I get to a decision because I want to know all the bits and pieces, what dials to turn and what levers to pull. And then I kind of postpone making a decision. So then my inner circle will actually tell me, dude, you're doing it again. Pull back.
Mm.
Good is good enough. Doesn't have to be perfect. So it's also a way for me to balance. And over time, I get better because, I can already hear them talking in my head now in the next EBR, like, why did you say that? But that's true. It's there. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I love this idea of, the challenge network. And
mm,
what you're describing too, Maddie, is such a forcing function. We all
yes.
know that we need to be thinking about our business and the strategy and taking a moment to evaluate and plan ahead. And then life gets in the way, business gets in the way, clients get in the way, and we don't do this. And so for you, you've created a forcing function for yourself and for your business.
Yeah.
To your point, I think at least half of the value is just you having that cadence of every quarter forcing yourself to take a step back and look at the bigger picture and then be able to present that to other people and get their, knowing that those voices in your head, right? Knowing that someone's going to, how are they going to react?
Yeah.
And then, of course, getting the feedback itself.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you think about the value that you're wanting to get out of this inner circle in the EBR process?
Yeah. So before we go, those voices in my head, because some of them will be listening, right? They're good voices. So let's just be clear. I mean, an EBR comes with a number of benefits, I think. First is the reflection, right?
Mm,
Like you say, every quarter I force myself to go through this process and validate my choices and my actions. I don't know, maybe in your corporate days, right? We all know this where you write your monthly or your weekly
mhm.
report. It's a bit of a
Yeah.
thing right now with the geopolitical situation on writing reports, but we know this in corporate, right? We do these things.
Yeah.
So your QBR is of your EBR. Now here I go. Your EBR is kind of your quarterly cadence to go. Okay, what did I do? Why did I do it? And then you have to build a report out of it. It makes you think.
Mhm.
And once you start doing this, you also start to think ahead of time, like, okay, if I have to report out on this, is this actually the right thing? Are we doing this? Are we committed? The other thing is accountability,
Mm,
right? So are we tracking to progress, the path to target that you have chosen, right? I'm based in Europe, so multiple ways lead to Rome. You don't know. Sometimes you need to adjust, right? There's a little bit of flexibility there. So that helps, just having that in the calendar. And these are senior people. They are dedicating their time, their energy to give you advice. For me, that weighs heavily because I know, I don't want to waste this guy's time. I don't want to burn that bridge. So
yeah.
I want to make sure that I deliver authentically and, that we have a good conversation. And interestingly, by the way, you put a lot into it, but the inner circle also takes something out of it, because funny enough, they see what you do and they
Mm,
apply it back to their corporate roles, or they get some learning out of it as well. So don't
mm.
think of EBR as a unidirectional conversation. It's bidirectional.
Incredible.
It's a weird dynamic, but it's one of the cool things I think of
Yeah.
VR. Okay, perspective is the other thing. Four minds know more than one. I just said it earlier, right? You get ideas, you get pointers. Sometimes you get references or read a book or I read an article. There's a market dynamic that might be interesting to you. It just, opens up your mind a little bit. And the last one, and help me out on the English here, but I think calibration is a good word.
Mm,
It allows me to unify the actions with the thinking and the outcome. So typically after an EBR, I will listen to the recording.
mm.
I will start to jot down, okay, how do we address this? What would be a good action to address this particular point? So you probably, you remember from your corporate days, what do you start? What do you stop? What do you continue doing? That's
Yeah.
basically what it boils
Yeah.
down to.
Yeah. I love that what you just described too. It's not just a one meeting, you're recording it and then dissecting it and really turning it into a more refined action plan for your business.
But you kind of have to because it's an intense conversation, right? If you do this right, you've prepped for it. And like I just said, it's like dragons, then they come with these questions that make you think. So you kind of respond impromptu in the
Mm,
moment, then and there, and you have the conversation, and then the meeting's over. Well, not the weight, but it kind of falls off your shoulder. And then typically the same evening later, I'll listen to the recording and I will hear different things, different contexts, or things I haven't picked up or that I haven't noted down. So again, this is a character thing for me. When I have a meeting, I always write because when I
mhm.
write, I assimilate that information. Then I can throw the book away, which is really annoying, but then it's in my head. So for me,
Yeah.
that's the way to memorize things. But when I'm in the meeting, when I'm speaking to somebody, I can't always capture what I'm writing. So when I listen to the recording again, there's nuances, there's finesses that I've missed that I can go back to. And sometimes it's even like, I'm not sure what he means. So I drop him a note or I go, hey, can we just chat about that? Like, what did you mean? So yeah, the recording is valuable. Yeah.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about how you identified so you mentioned some of the people that are on the steering committee, the inner circle. Tell me a little bit about how you decided what that mix would be.
Okay. So first of all, these are people that you trust. The
Hmm.
litmus test there is really easy. Are you able to give your wallet to these
Yeah.
people? Like
Yeah.
it's that level, right? It also means that these people have a vested interest in you, not in your business, in
Mm,
you as a person, right? They want to invest in you to make you successful, not for the goal for their own benefit, but really you have a click with these people in some weird way. We all have this. In business, there's people you work with, there's people you exchange information with. So you want to have people that are vested in you and that really want to make you successful. I think if we all sit back and we think about, out of everybody that I work with, who are my people, the people that
mm,
are really there for me.
hmm.
Who's the one that pats you on the back when something goes right or that calls you when, something went wrong?
Yeah.
Those are typically your people and they are super important. The other thing is these people have something that you don't have, or these people, they can ask you the questions that make you think. They offer
Mm,
perspective, they offer
yeah.
guidance. You can call them the Gandalfs, the Guinans, or the oracles, or the gurus, give it a name. But there's something to these people that makes you think. That's a really
Hmm.
good indicator that, that could be a mentor, that could be somebody in your inner circle or steering committee, as you call it. Lastly, I think it's important that these people align to your values, your way of working, your work ethos.
Mm,
You click with these people because, you see eye to eye with them. In your career, I'm going to guess there's people that, you've worked with that felt like it's hand in glove. You could just hand things off to and they go. I've had a few of those. And every time you have that, it's like magic. There's, stuff just happens. And I think that's rare and that's something to be cherished when you come across it because it can really drive something. And also, if you want to trust somebody, it kind of comes natural that that click is there. But I
yeah.
think these are sort of the four characteristics I would look for in people in my inner circle. But also, when you look for a coach or when you look for a mentor, these things are really important because if that's not there, you are not going to open up. You're not going to make yourself vulnerable. It's going to be really hard to get to the core of some of the issues. And I've listened to many of your podcasts about mindset, and some of these things are really personal, like what's your relationship with money? you know,
Yeah.
if you want to have that discussion, you need to be comfortable to talk about that with the audience that is in front of you. If you don't have that trust, you're not going to have the genuine conversation, right? There's going to be a shield or
That's right.
something up there. So it's not going to work unless you have those characteristics. I think these characteristics in some of those people.
Yeah. And I think what you're saying too is so important. Like, you're not proving something to them. You're not trying to show them you've done a good job over the last quarter, although celebrating your wins is definitely part of it. But it's much more about being open and honest of where the challenges are in the business and what the choices are that you're battling, and helping you to see your blind spots.
Yeah, and I'm going to be honest with you. Sometimes that's really tough
Yeah.
because one of the things you don't want to do is to put an EBR in place and make it a good news show. Where you go like,
Right.
hey, look at me, it's fantastic. It's like social media, right? I'm here,
Right.
I'm there, look at me, this is my good side. Ooh, doesn't work like that. If you don't have that, I call it vulnerability. If you don't have that authenticity to talk about the hard issues, the things
Hmm.
you lose sleep over, the things you're struggling with, the decision you're procrastinating on because you just don't know what to do, or it's not going to bring you the maximum value because you're not addressing the root causes. You're just talking about the symptoms, or maybe you're just, it's all smoke and mirrors. And then it's really just a waste of time.
Yeah.
So it's a choice. You have to commit to it. And again, this is where it's a two-way street, right? They're committing
Hmm.
their time, they're committing their energy and their advice, but you have to make sure you open up and you give a realistic picture of what's going on.
Yeah. That's where it differs from a corporate QBR. We'll put
Yeah,
we'll put it that way.
absolutely. Like,
There's definitely
we can
not a
talk about that
at
too.
least the QBRs, which ironically I think we talked about this before, Matty, but when I was in corporate, one of our clients was Intel, and we would go do QBRs for Intel. It's like such a small world.
Yeah,
But there was never a time where you weren't trying to put a lipstick on the pig, make everything look so much better than it might have been in reality. So I think part of this is using that concept, but then also, to your point, in a slightly different way.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Funny because one of my clients was Accenture, so maybe we should have crossed paths back in the day. I don't know, but
that's right. Let's see. Tell us one of the things you mentioned, if you're game to go into this part of the conversation. So, part of it, you were mentioning about coaching and the vulnerabilities required during, with having a coach, and then also translating those over to the EBR. Tell us a little bit, if you're game for it. How do you think about leveraging a coach in parallel with this inner circle? And how did you come to decide to do both of those things, and setting that structure up for yourself?
okay, actually, I'm gonna reflect back on some of the words you put out there on the podcast, right? So you've mentioned a number of times that you believe in the power of mentors, as do
Mm.
I. And
Yeah.
I have had the benefit of a number of mentors in my career, for which I'm super grateful. These people have shaped not just my career, but some of the bigger life choices in some of the jobs you went for or things you did. So I think mentors are an accelerator. Having
Mm.
multiple mentors is like a compound effect on that because you get even more perspective. And when you have multiple mentors, you can take from all those different conversations, you can take from it what you need or what
Mm.
works for you. And then you can incorporate those different things and apply them to your unique situation. It's not very different than what we do, I think, subconsciously on a daily basis, right? We read books, we listen to podcasts, we look at the TV. There's information coming us from everywhere, basically. And we take from that and we remember, or we gravitate towards the thing that we're interested in. So having multiple mentors is not very different in that
Mhm.
respect, I think.
Yeah.
The other thing is typically when you have mentors or coaches, they are skilled at different things, right? So there's different
Mm.
expertises or different skills, different talents. And the beauty is you can dip into that and learn from these people, and you combine those different things. See, now I'm back to moment thesis. I'm synthesizing different things
Yes.
and I'm putting them in one bucket. But really, that's what that is. And it's amazing. One of my mentors, this is another thing, by the way, you never know when you have mentors, right? These people go places and then they go in. So I'm going to give you an example, but it's not to boast, it's just to give you an example. Back in the Intel days, I used to work on a client with one of the Intel VPs back in the day. He was corporate sponsor for one of my accounts. Great guy. We clicked well. Now, I was 23 years in Intel. So a couple of years later, this guy actually wrote a book. Later on, he became CEO of the company, right? Fantastic. But he gave me some of the best advices in the
Mm,
days prior to him being that CEO. We still connect from time to time. But
mm,
the key thing there is he once told me, you need guardrails in life.
yeah.
And some of these guardrails are going to be there for life because they're going to work for you. And everybody's different. Everybody has their own unique journey. What works for me may not work for you. But I mean, you coach a lot, right? You talk to a lot of different people. I would imagine when you jump on a call with them, you start sizing them up and you can already, maybe there's like a spidey sense. I don't know. Maybe you want to talk about that, how that works for you. But
Yeah.
you kind of can feel like, no, maybe this guy's a little bit like this. And, that lady's a little bit like that. And maybe this will work. And that's important because that will accelerate how you operate your business, how efficient or effective you are. Or, I mean, it can even be down to a personal level, right? Like, how do you deal with some of these different roles, the stress levels that come with it?
Yeah.
So it's a combined package. I'm on a
Yeah.
rant now, so I'll stop
Yeah.
here. I hope that kind of gives you an answer. And I'm actually keen to
Yeah.
hear from you. Like, when we first met, how did you size me up? What did you think? Did you know I was a perfectionist when I jumped on the call? You're like, oh my
Oh,
God, this guy.
that's a great question. I don't I probably probably, I spend a lot of time talking to independent consultants, and some I offer coaching. They come to me asking to if coaching might be a good fit. Some I offer coaching to maybe 60% of the people that come on the call. The other 40%, it doesn't feel like it might be the best fit, either because, to your point, it doesn't feel like it's going to be a transparent something that's not clicking there that you were describing earlier, right? And
Mm,
so I don't feel like in the moment, I could be wrong, but in the moment it doesn't feel like I might be able to help this person because we can't get to that level of transparency. Or it may be that they're, wanting to accomplish a goal that I don't believe I'm the best suited to help them to accomplish.
yeah,
Or, so some tangible and some intangible. But, to your point, I've designed a process to try to uncover that as best as possible for myself and also for the person I'm talking to see if for them to make that same decision on their side. But yeah, when we first met, it may have come out fairly quickly that you were a perfectionist.
oh,
But,
wow.
I tend to attract a lot of perfectionists because it's something that I personally, battle myself. So I think we tend to attract the type of people that are similar to us, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which actually is a great point, right? Because that's not what you want in your inner circle. You want the opposite for
Yeah.
exactly that reason.
Yeah.
So for me, they don't call it a challenge network for nothing. You
Right.
want somebody that challenges you, but respectfully,
That's
velvet
right.
glove.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need a bit of a slap in the face if you're really, off the rails, but you want somebody that helps you on the way and goes, well, maybe this is beneficial for you if you do it like this, rather than, why the hell do you do this way? You should do it that way. But again,
Yeah.
some people need the black and white approach. Some people are more in the gray. Again, it's a personal thing. That's why it's so important that you pick your people.
Yeah. I think having this combination, I guess, if you will, for variety, a spectrum of
Mm,
people, to your point, Maddie, sounds like some of them you've had long-standing relationships with, some one you met on a plane. You and I have been working together for the last 6 months or so. So we're a newer relationship, but bringing those different perspectives to the table, some that maybe have accomplished the goal that you want to accomplish, others that have overcome maybe the challenges that you're facing, some that are complete, in a different industry, maybe that can bring a different perspective to the table. But, having the variety, it seems, is in perspective has been valuable for you.
Again, you want to learn from these different, at least I want to, because,
Yeah.
this guy, like, how, it's like some people can do things that you can't, and they make it look so easy. And then you're like,
Mm.
it's not that hard, I'll just go and do it. And then you're like, well, I can barbecue, but I can't cook the way my wife does. She'll put things on the table like, how did you do that? Like the chicken
Yeah.
is crispy and it's got the little, like when I'm behind the grill, I'm trying to figure it out. I'm there with the book and the thermometer, and I'm not getting to that point. You know, but
Yeah.
it's a weird analogy. I don't know how we got there, but that's the thing with coaches and
Yeah.
mentors. Some of these guys, I've seen them turn business, and it was like a twist of their pinky, and they made it happen. I'm like, how?
Yeah.
How did they do it?
I think it's so inspiring too, right? For the mentors that I work with, I have my own coaches. I
Mm,
talk about them a lot on the
you
podcast.
do. That's a mystical topic in itself. We need to do
Yeah.
that someday. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And the mentors that I have, even just talking with them and hearing what they think is possible versus what you might be thinking is possible is such a way to lift perspective and to see that bigger picture that you might not have even imagined.
So you bring up another great point. I think another qualifying factor for somebody in your inner circle is somebody that sees more potential in you than you do.
Mm, yeah.
This person is going to push you beyond your boundaries. And you've done that to me, by the way, in my coaching, right? So I think I know I need that. I need that to push myself out there, because otherwise you create a lid for yourself. It's your own glass ceiling, basically.
Yeah,
And
that's
you
right.
need to break through that.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times you need people around you to sort of show you that it is a glass ceiling. The thing isn't made of concrete. You can punch through this. You can do this. And just having that wind in your sails, having that push in your back, kind of thrusts you to go higher or to push forward. And it's not always about a bigger target or a bigger number. It's about personal
Mm,
development. It's about you getting on stage when maybe that's not your thing, or it's about you doing lead gen, which is maybe not everybody's forte, or you getting into your finances, which I know is not my favorite thing, but
mm, yeah.
that type of
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. Tell us, when you think back to your inner circle and the
Mhm.
EBR process that you've had, is there any example that stands out, Maddie, that's been kind of one of the biggest breakthroughs or ahas that you've had as part of that process?
Yeah. Well, I just talked about finances and
Yeah.
pricing, right? Oh my God.
Mm,
Okay. So at some point, I realized I undervalued myself and my services, and I didn't see it. I needed
yeah.
my inner circle to tell me. I needed my inner circle to, basically, I made a rookie mistake. And I can, because I'm only 2 years in. So I got a bit of a, get out of jail card on this one. But I handed my finances off to my bookkeeper.
Mm,
Great, we're done. And then one of these guys starts asking me about my bottom line and my cost structure, the cost of sales. I'm like, what, wait, what? So here's the accountability piece. And now I need to get into the books and really figure out what's going on.
yeah.
And then I had this coach who's like, okay, we need to look at your cost structure and, get into those type of details. So yes, I think we're back to where we just came from. There was
Yeah.
a push for me to really get into it and understand my business and run it as a business.
Mm,
So that really helped me. At the same time, I also learned, oh, wait, there's more things that I can offer as services to my clients that are valuable to them. Why didn't I think of these things? Wonderful. My value prop. To this day, these people are on me to be more crisp about my value
mhm.
prop. Every time I'm getting better at it, but they keep pushing me on this because it needs to be crisp, right? You need to do that pitch in an elevator like it's nothing, and it needs to
Yeah.
be muscle memory. And every time, if one of them is listening right now, they're laughing because they're pushing me on it, and rightfully so, right? If that works, I will be successful.
Yeah.
Business will grow. We'll get the clients quicker. People will understand your business faster. So, okay, it's a good thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good thing. And it helps, again, back to the perspective, right? It may feel really crisp in your mind, and then you say it out loud and you realize, oh, maybe it isn't quite as crisp as I thought it was. And then people are, pushing you in that direction. It just helps you to, even though it can be uncomfortable in the moment, it really helps to accelerate those results like you're describing.
Yeah. So another thing that comes to mind is one of them actually told me, is like, you need a case study, like your first client, write it up, write that
Mm,
case study, get it on a PDF, and then when you talk to a client, send it out. So then you can have a Q&A about an actual case. This is going to
yeah.
help you to make them understand what you do. And I started doing that. And you know what? He was right.
Yeah.
So, okay, lesson learned.
And it helps you to know what you do, right? As you're going through that process.
No, true, but and you learn, right? Every
Yeah,
time you learn.
absolutely.
And I think as you always say, you have five hats, but I think as independent consultants, we have another hat, which is we're just learning all the time,
Yeah.
every time, because we need to, because you need to adopt, you need to figure out what is the skill set that I'm missing, how do I get better at this, and it's not to be the best or to, be the first over the finish line. No, it's about finding that rhythm where, when I get into this conversation, I'm ready, I'm confident, I have the right mindset, I have these points in my brain, I can, just fire these things off like a machine gun and they're on point. That's a skill. And
Yeah.
these are things we need to master.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell us, as you think about looking back now that you've done this for a while, Maddie, at least a year with
Yep.
this inner circle, tell us about some of the lessons learned. If you were a consultant listening to this and
Yeah.
setting this up, what are the mistakes that you might help them to avoid or the best practices you might recommend to them?
Yeah. Okay. So I love that question. So first of all, this is not my first QBR. I've done many, many, many QBRs, but
Yeah.
EBR, right? They're
Yeah.
really different. Just as a ground rule, an EBR is about meeting hygiene, being ready, knowing
Mm,
your numbers, having an agenda, having a bunch of slides up front. Doesn't have to be a lot. I always tend to have more slides than I need to. Somebody told me get it down to 3 slides, and we'll get into what those 3 slides are. But that's really just sort of the baseline for an EBR, right? So taking it from the top for an EBR. So when you
mm,
do this for your business with your inner circle, I think the first mistake is to not agree on ground rules and expectations
mm,
for your inner circle and for you, right?
yeah.
Be clear about the time invest that's required. You're asking senior people to jump on a call with you and to spend time with you. If you have to pay these people, you're paying a hefty sum. Sometimes you actually, you do pay depending on your business. Sometimes you don't. If you don't, I think there's a bit even more onus on you to make sure that you do this. But get your materials ready and, just be committed. Be clear about when people provide input, what happens to that
Mm,
input and how will you action it. But
mm,
also be clear that you're a one-man band. There's limited time and resources for what you do because sometimes these people are executives, right? If there is an action, that action is delegated, and next time I want to know what's up.
yeah.
But if you're a one man band and you've got a million things to do, then maybe it's not next QBR that I'll have this fixed, but maybe
Yeah.
it's the one after. So for them, it's also a mindset, right? So make sure those
Yeah.
expectations are set. And I think under that same line, I would say, there's guidance, but also celebrate the wins. I think for
Hmm.
us as independent consultant
Hmm.
business owners, I've been practicing this. It's really important that we celebrate small wins because we're on a journey. And I feel like, you have your first client, you do your first proposal, your first contract. Hey, you finally start seeing the first sum of funds land in your bank account. These are all small wins and they're all worth celebrating because this is how you grow. This is how there's a book out there called Moments. I don't know who the writer is,
Mm,
but I think there's so much truth in that celebrate those wins as well. Just make, one of the slides I put in backup is always these are the things that we achievements. These are my wins this quarter because I can
yeah.
pat myself on the back. That's important.
Yeah, absolutely. I think something important to touch on here, Maddie, is that there's a fine line. You are not the employee of the EBR committee.
Yeah.
In fact, they may give you advice that you decide that is not the best direction for your company
Yeah.
and yourself. And I'm curious, how do you reconcile that?
Yes. Yes. Okay. I actually have a few more points, by the way, on what
Yeah.
not to do.
Mm,
But yes, so going back to your one man band, ultimately
yeah.
you own your business. So in setting those expectations, I think this is something you need to address as well. And there's a way to gracefully say that, right? It's not like, okay, you told me, but I'm not going to listen because that's
Yeah.
going to turn people off. But you can also say, hey, I accept the advice, but right now, where I am in my journey, I think this is the right way to do things.
Hmm.
And I want to try this because I feel, or I think, whatever your motivation is, this is the right way to go.
Yeah.
That's why you're an entrepreneur. That's why you're an independent consulting business owner, right?
Yeah.
And hey, if it's going to work for you and it works out great, fine. If it doesn't, and you screw up and there's a problem, it's on you. But that's what a business owner is about. You learn. The other thing is that these EBRs become a bit of a decision log, right? Because hey,
Yeah.
you said you were going to do this, you did this, and now we're here. Back to accountability, right?
Hmm.
So was it a good decision? Was it a bad decision? So I always like to think that over time,
Mm.
EBRs will improve my decision making quality.
Hmm.
Right now, I might suck at it, or I might be really good at it, but over time, we can calibrate these things.
Yeah.
So that's there. So there's a few more things I just want to give you to
Yeah.
watch
Tell
out
us.
for. So treating the EBR is yet another meeting. It's not. This is your board meeting, right? These are
Yeah.
your advisors. So make sure you respect that. I think the other mistake we already talked about is to make it a good news show. Don't do it, right? Open up, be authentic. And then the last one that I think is important is when you select your people for the inner circle, it's really tempting to bring in friends, close friends,
Mm.
because
Hmm.
they're people that would probably fit that criteria that we talked about earlier fairly quickly, right? But once people are too close, it's going to be hard to accept advice. Although maybe you think you can, but when
Mm.
people are too close to you. So
Yeah.
I had one of my friends join me on the EBR as well. And we both kind of came to the conclusion, well, it kind of messed up our relationship
Mm.
because, now my friend is telling me off. Well, he's not telling me off. My friend is telling me that he's calling my baby ugly, which is my
Yeah.
is. It just, I don't know, it doesn't work. So you need some healthy distance between
Mm.
you and your inner circle.
Yeah.
These people need to know you well enough. They need to know your character, your work ethos, but they need to be able to also steer you.
Yeah.
So, like I said earlier, right, these people need to be in your orbit, but not on your planet. I don't know if that works, but that's
Yeah.
kind of how I
I
think of
love that.
it. Okay.
Absolutely. Maddie, as we're wrapping up here today, tell me, is there anything else you want to add? This has been so valuable. I'm excited to hear which listeners put this strategy into action.
Yeah, no, I hope it helps people. I mean, I get
Yeah.
so much out of your podcast. Again, Melissa, just thank you. And again, I'm just super excited to be here. Never imagined, that listening to this podcast. I know I've told you sometimes I sit in my car and I listen to these podcasts and I'm talking back to the radio. Now, I'm here. So that's cool. No, to my
Yeah.
fellow independent consultants out there listening, I would say, keep going, keep learning, and, share your learnings with others. Coming out of
Yeah.
corporate, for me, it's so refreshing to see and hear the stories and the journeys of other independent consultants. Sometimes you interview people like you do me. It's just wonderful. And seeing them help each other, I feel like us independent consulting business owners, we're really a community. And I love that.
Yeah.
So that's one.
Yeah.
To my friends in corporates, I really want to say that, if you're considering an exit into the consulting space, because then they'll be listening to this podcast, right?
Mm.
Realize that your personal brand and network, the thing you have right now, will be the biggest thing you take with you when you exit into a consulting practice, right? I never really did realize that. And it's
Yeah.
surprising just how powerful your personal brand, not your
Yeah.
corporate brand, is,
Yeah.
and how powerful your network can be when you start working as that independent consultant business owner. So realize that, use it to the benefit of your corporate and your corporate job. That's fantastic, and keep building. Corporate is a great learning school and you can have a great career there as well. We all know this. But when you get into the consultant business space, oh man, your network and your personal brand, it's so important. And then lastly, if anybody feels like, hey, I want to talk some more to this guy, reach out via LinkedIn if
Mm.
it's about consulting. I'm a newbie, but happy to talk to anybody. I put a monthly newsletter out where I talk about creating business momentum for your innovation. If that's of your interest, please subscribe. I'd love that. And keep going strong and keep listening to Melissa. She's got some great advice, and hope to someday somehow meet you guys out there.
Yeah, we'll put the links in the show notes. Maddie, thank you for making that offer
Thank you.
for others to reach out to you. There may be some collaboration opportunities in the
Yeah, love
audience.
that. Bring it.
And I will see you soon on our next EBR, actually.
Yeah, get ready
Yeah.
because I'm sending materials. This one is going to be good. Okay.
Amazing. Thanks, Matty. We'll
Thank
talk
you.
with you
Yeah.
later.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks for joining me this week on the Grow Your Independent Consulting Business podcast. If you liked today's episode, I have 3 quick next steps for you. First, click subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to make sure you don't miss future episodes. Next, leave me a review in your podcast app so other independent consultants can find and benefit too. And finally, to put the ideas from today's episode into action, head over to melisaliberman.com for the show notes and more resources to help you grow your consulting practice from your first few projects into a full-fledged business. See you next week.